Hare Krishna, my friends. Nice to see you again. We're back here in Bhaktiville after a little vacation. We finished reading the Shikshastakam, so we'll start right in on the reading of Teachings of Lord Caitanya. We are on the PDF page 87, Chapter 3, if you have the book. There's a link that you can follow to download the book if you don't have it. We'll leave some time at the end for comments, questions, and answers, and then we'll have some kirtan and dancing. Chapter 3, Teachings to Sanatan Goswami. So we, just as a review, in the previous chapters, Sanatan Goswami was working for the Nawab, and he left his job, and under difficult circumstances. He was in jail and got himself out of jail, and now he's with Lord Caitanya, and Lord Caitanya is giving him instructions in Bhakti Yoga. So, Teachings to Sanatan Goswami. In the instructions of Lord Caitanya to Sanatan Goswami, we can understand the science of God in the matter of his transcendental form, his opulences, and his devotional service. For everything is being described to Sanatan Goswami by the Lord himself. At that time, Sanatan fell at the feet of the Lord, and with great humility asked about his own real identity. He spoke as follows: I am born of a lower family. My associations are all abominable, and I am fallen, the most wretched of mankind. I was suffering in the dark well of material enjoyment, and I never knew the actual goal of my life. I do not know what is beneficial to me. Although in the mundane sphere I am what is known as a great learned man, I am in fact so much of a fool that even I accept that I am learned. You've accepted me as your servant, and you have delivered me from the entanglement of material life. Now you can tell me what my duty is in this liberated state of life. In other words, as we see by this plea, liberation is not the final word in perfection. There must be activities in liberation. Sanatan clearly asks, you have saved me from the entanglement of material existence. Now, after liberation, what is my duty? Kindly explain it to me. Sanatan further inquired, who am I? Why are the threefold miseries always giving me trouble? And finally, tell me how I will be relieved from this material entanglement. I do not know how to question you about the advancement of spiritual life, but I beg that you kindly, mercifully, let me know everything that I should know. This is the process of acceptance of a spiritual master by the disciple. One should approach a spiritual master with humbly submit to him, and then inquire from him about one's spiritual progress. The Lord was pleased by Sanatan's submissive behavior, and he replied as follows: You have already received benediction from Lord Krishna, and therefore you know everything, and you are free from all the miseries of material existence. The Lord further replied that because Sanatan was in Krishna consciousness, naturally, by the grace of Krishna, he was already conversant with everything, but because you are a humble devotee, you are asking me to confirm what is already realized by you. This is very nice. These are the characteristics of a true devotee. In the Narada Bhakti Sutra, it is said that one who is very serious about developing his Krishna consciousness, by the grace of the Lord, has his desire for understanding Krishna fulfilled very soon. The Lord said, You are a suitable person for protecting the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, it is my duty to instruct you in the science of God, and I will explain to you everything, step by step. It is the duty of a disciple approaching a spiritual master to inquire about his constitutional position. In conformity to that spiritual process, Sanatan has already asked, "What am I, and why am I suffering from the threefold miseries?" The threefold miseries are called Adhyatmic, Abhibaudic, and Adidaivik. Adhyatmic means caused by the body and mind. Sometimes the living entities suffer bodily, and sometimes he is distressed mentally. Both are Adhyatmic miseries. We experience these miseries even in the womb of our mother. There are many forms of misery that take advantage of our delicate body and give us pain. Miseries inflicted by other living entities are called adibotic. There are many living entities, such as bugs born of eggs, that cause us miseries while we are sleeping in bed. There are many living entities, like cockroaches, that sometimes give us pain. And there are other living entities born on different kinds of planets, and they also cause us miseries. So far as Adidaivik miseries are concerned, they originate with the demigods from the higher planets. For instance, sometimes we suffer from serious cold weather. Sometimes we suffer from the thunderbolt. Sometimes from earthquakes, tornadoes, droughts, and other natural disasters. So we are always suffering one or another of these three kinds of miseries. Sanatan's enquiry was, what is the position of the living entities? Why are they always undergoing these three kinds of miseries? Sanatan has admitted his weakness. Although he was known by the mass of people as a greatly learned man, and actually he was a highly learned Sanskrit scholar, and although he accepted the designation of a very learned man given him by the mass of people, yet he did not actually know what his constitutional position was, and why he was subjected to the threefold miseries. The necessity of approaching a spiritual master is not a fashion, but it is for he who is seriously conscious of the material miseries and who wants to be free of them. It is the duty of such a person to approach the spiritual master. We find similar circumstances in the Bhagavad Gita. When Arjuna was perplexed by so many problems involving whether to fight or not, he accepted Lord Krishna as his spiritual master. There also, it was a case of the Supreme Spiritual Master instructing Arjuna about the constitutional position of the living entity. In the Bhagavad Gita, we are informed that the constitutional nature of the living entity is spirit soul. He is not matter. Therefore, as spirit soul, he is part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, the Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead. We also learn that it is the duty of the spirit soul to surrender, for only then can he be happy. The last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita is that the spirit soul is to surrender completely unto the Supreme Soul, Krishna, and in that way realize happiness. Here also, Lord Caitanya, in answering the questions of Sanatan, repeats the same truth, but without giving him information about the spirit soul, which is already described in the Gita. He begins from the point where Krishna ended his instruction. It is accepted by great devotees that Lord Caitanya is Krishna himself, and from the point where he ended his instruction in the Gita, he now begins his instruction again to Sanatan. The Lord said to Sanatan, "Your constitutional position is that you are pure living soul. This material body is not the identity of your real self. Neither is your mind your real identity, nor your intelligence. nor is false ego the real identity. Oops, my iPad just moved. Sorry. Nor is the false ego the real identity of the self. Your identity is that you are the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Your position is that you are transcendental. The superior energy of Krishna is spiritual in constitution, and the inferior external energy is material. You are between the material energy and the spiritual energy, and therefore your position is marginal. In other words, you belong to the marginal potency of Krishna. You are simultaneously one with and different from Krishna. Because you are spirit, therefore you are not different from Krishna. But because you are only a minute particle of Krishna, you are therefore different from him. This simultaneous oneness and difference always exists in the relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Lord. From the marginal position of the living entities, this simultaneously one and different concept is understood. The living entity is just like a molecular part of the sunshine, whereas Krishna is compared to the blazing, shining sun. Lord Caitanya compared the living entities to the blazing sparks from the fire, and the Supreme Lord to the blazing fire of the sun. The Lord cites in this connection a verse from Vishnu Purana, in which it is stated that everything that is manifested within this cosmic world is but an energy of the Supreme Lord. For example, as emanating from one place exhibits its illumination and heat all around, so the Lord, although situated in one place in the spiritual world, manifests his different energies everywhere. And the whole world of cosmic representation is but different manifestations of his energy. The energy of the Supreme Lord is transcendental and spiritual, and the living entities are part and parcel of that energy. But there is another energy called material energy, which is covered by the cloud of ignorance, and thereby divided into the three modes or gunas of material nature. Lord Caitanya quoted from Vishnu Purana that all inconceivable energies reside in the Supreme Personality of the Lord, and the whole cosmic manifestation acts due to the same inconceivable energy of the Lord. The Lord says that the living entities are also known as Kshetrajna, or knower of the field of activities. In the 13th chapter of the Gita, the body is described as the field of activities, and the living entity as Kshetrajna, the knower of the field. Although the living entity is constitutionally conversant with spiritual energy, or has the potency to understand, he is covered by the material energy, and he consequently believes this body to be himself. This is called false ego. In material existence, deluded by this false ego, the bewildered living entity changes his different bodies and suffers various kinds of miseries. The knowledge of his true position is present to different extents in different varieties of living entities. In other words, it is to be understood that the living entity is part and parcel of the supreme energy, of the spiritual energy of the Supreme Lord. The material energy is inferior energy, and therefore man has the potency to become uncovered from this material energy and utilize the spiritual energy. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that the superior energy is covered by the inferior energy. Due to this covering, the living entity is subjected to the miseries of the material world, and in proportion to the different degrees of obscureness, he suffers material miseries. Those who are a little enlightened suffer less, but on the whole, everyone is subjected to material miseries due to being covered by the material energy. The Lord also quoted from the Gita 7th chapter, in which it is stated that earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego all combine together to form the inferior energy of the Supreme Lord. But the superior energy is the real identity of the living entity, a living being. Because of that energy, the whole material world functions. The cosmic manifestation, made of material elements, has no power to act unless it is moved by the superior energy, the living entity. So actually, the conditional life of the living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Lord in the superior energy. When that relationship is forgotten, conditional life is the result. Only when man revives his real identity, that of eternal servitor to the Lord, does he become liberated. Chapter 4. The Wise Man. Nobody can trace the history of the living entity's entanglement in material energy. Therefore, the Lord says that it is beginningless. Beginningless means that conditional life exists prior to the creation. It is simply manifested with and after the creation. Due to forgetfulness of his nature, the living entity, although spirit, suffers all kinds of miseries in material existence. It is to be understood here that there are also other living entities who are not entangled in this material energy. Such living entities are situated in the spiritual world, and they are called liberated souls. They are always engaged in Krishna consciousness in devotional service. The activities of those who are conditioned by material nature are taken into account, and in their next life, according to these activities, they are offered different grades of material bodies. In the material world, the spiritual soul in conditional life is subjected to different rewards and punishments. When he is rewarded, he is elevated to the higher planets due to his righteous activities, and there he becomes one of the many demigods. And when he is punished for his abominable activities, he is thrown into different kinds of hellish planets, and there he suffers the miseries of material existence more acutely. The Lord gives a very nice example of this punishment. Formerly, a king used to punish a criminal by dunking him in the river, and then raising him again for a breath, and then again dunking him once more in the water. Material nature punishes and rewards the individual entity in just the same way. When he is punished, he is dunked into the water of material miseries, and when he is rewarded, he is taken out of it for some time. Elevation of the living entity to higher planets or to a higher status of life is never permanent. He has to come down again to be submerged in the water. All this goes on in material existence. Sometimes one is elevated to the higher planetary system, and sometimes one is thrown into the hellish condition of material life. In this connection, the Lord recites a nice verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, taken from the instruction of Narada Muni to Vasudeva, the father of Krishna. In this quotation from the 9 sages who were instructing Maharaj Nemi, it is stated that forgetfulness of the relationship with Krishna is called Maya. Actually, Maya means that which is not. It has no existence. Therefore, that the living entity has no connection with the Supreme Lord is a false conception. He may not believe in the existence of God, or he may think he has no relationship with God. But these are all illusions, or Maya. Due to his absorption in this false conception of life, man is always fearful and full of anxieties. In other words, a godless concept of life is Maya. And therefore one who is actually learned in the Vedic literature surrenders unto the Supreme Lord with great devotion and accepts him as the supreme goal. When a living entity becomes forgetful of the constitutional nature of his relationship with God, then he is at once overwhelmed by the external energy, and this is the cause of his false ego, identifying his body as himself. His whole conception of the material universe is due to this false conception of the body. He becomes attached to this body and to the byproducts of this body. To escape this entanglement, he has simply to perform his duty, to surrender unto the Supreme Lord with intelligence, with devotion, and with sincere Krishna consciousness. A conditioned soul falsely thinks himself happy in the material world, but if he is favored by an unalloyed devotee, by hearing instruction from the unalloyed devotee, he gives up the desire for material enjoyment and becomes enlightened in Krishna consciousness. As soon as one enters into Krishna consciousness, his desire for material enjoyment at once is vanquished, and gradually he becomes free from material entanglement. For example, because there is no question of darkness where there is light, Krishna consciousness is like the light that dispels the darkness of material sense enjoyment. A Krishna conscious person is never under the false conception that he is one with God. He does not think that he would be happy by working for himself. He engages all his energy in the service of the Supreme Lord, and thereby becomes released from the clutches of illusory material energy. In this connection, the Lord quotes a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, to the effect that the material energy containing the three modes of material nature is very strong. It is very difficult to escape the process of material energy, but one who surrenders unto Krishna easily becomes free from the clutches of Maya. The Lord went on to teach that the conditioned soul, for each and every moment in which he is engaged in some fruitive activity, is forgetting his real identity. Sometimes, when he is fatigued, when he is tired of material activities, he wants liberation and wants to become one with the Supreme. But at other times, he thinks that by working hard for his sense gratification, he will be happy. In both cases, he is covered by material energy. For the enlightenment of such bewildered, conditioned souls who are working under false identification, the Lord has presented us with so much Vedic literature, such as the Vedas, the Puranas, and the Vedanta Sutra, all intended to guide the human being back to Godhead. The Lord has presented further instructions, advising that when a conditioned soul is accepted by the mercy of the spiritual master, and when he is guided by the supersoul, he takes advantage of the various Vedic scriptures, becomes enlightened, and makes progress in his spiritual realization. It is understood that Lord Krishna is always merciful to his devotees, and therefore he has presented all this Vedic literature, by which one can understand his relationship with Krishna and can act in that relationship, with the result that he is gifted with the ultimate goal of life. Actually, every living entity is destined to reach the Supreme Lord, and everyone can understand his relationship with the Supreme Lord. The execution of duties to attain perfection is known as devotional service, and in maturity, Such devotional service becomes love of God, the factual goal of life for every living being. The living entity is not intended to achieve success in religious perfection or economic development or sense enjoyment. Religiousness, economic development, sense enjoyment, and liberation should not actually be desired by the living entity. The real desire of the entity should be to achieve the stage of loving transcendental service to the Lord. The all-attractive features of Lord Krishna help one in attaining Krishna consciousness, and when one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he can realize the relationship between Krishna and himself. I think that's a good place to stop right there. Any questions? It was very nice. Bhakti says in chat, that was very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Bhakti. Good to see you. Can you turn on some music and we can dance a little bit?
Tare